Welcome back. This is going to pick up where we left on beveling part 1. As you can see, we've got the original piece and we need to clean up a few more spots on it and then we can progress farther. We need to clean up and add in some beveling to this area right here, and we can move forward after that. And going to take my handy little spray bottle, lightly case the leather, get it to a good moisture consistency once again so we can start beveling it. Moisture consistency is pretty important. If you get it right, you'll get a nice little browning to the leather when you compress it. I'm going to take a Sharpie and color in the letters on the tools so you guys can see it a little bit better, so you can see what tools I'm actually using to accomplish what I'm doing. Don't do it over the leather. You'll never get the Sharpie out of the leather. This is a medium coarseness on a beveling tool. I like to use it for the mid-ground on beveling. As you can see on the head here, it's, a nice little light pattern, but it adds a nice finish to it. Going to go into the corners, give a completed bevel to these lines that we didn't complete on the last video. Just slowly work your way through the edge and complete the two lines. Now we're going to take the beveler and go over where these lines terminate into the outside line. We're going to knock down all that area and then move forward. Once we have that complete, we're going to bring the lines through the center of the cuff all the way to the edge and compress it, just make it look like it's tucked underneath the outside border. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Coming down through the center lines, bringing them all the way up to the edge so they look like they're tucked underneath the border. And it just gives us a nice little clean finish on the edges so the piece has a good flow to it. You want symmetry. Now this has a very coarse texture to it. This is a very serious background tool. I usually do this one when I'm wanting something to appear very far back in a scene or establish depth on the actual piece. Using this beveler, I nestle it up against the line and I give it a good toe where I'm tilting it backwards so it's got less of a contact patch on the area that I'm tooling. It's a way to isolate your work and not have it carry over into places that you don't want it. Now this background tool has a flat side and a rounded edge. When I get into corners, I like to flip it around and use the rounded edge and then just toe it again. You'll have to put a pretty hard toe on it. Just be gentle and nestle it up to the line and compress that area. Take your time. You can go back over it some. Here you can see how much of a toe I'm going to put into this just so it nestles in, gives it a good flow to the piece. Take the rounded edge and just get it in there. And beware of butterfingers. Try never to drop your tools on the granite. It'll hurt them. They won't like you very much. Okay, now you can see what kind of pattern this drops into the piece. See how it gives it a nice darkening edge to the area that you've been tooling on? As I said earlier, it's a way to kind of give the illusion of depth without a whole lot of depth. So over the years, people have asked me how I do my bubble texture. Well, here it is. This is a rivet setter. It's not a leather tool in the classical sense, but it's got a dome to it. It's got a circle. Everything can technically be used as a tool. Just drive it in, it'll work. Alright, taking our rivet setter, we're going to start putting dots into the piece, or bubbles. Tilt your tool and work it around in a circle, lightly tapping it to give it a good, impression. It's neat looking. I start out with the rivet setter and just slowly work my way through, dropping big bubbles or dots wherever I just think they need to be. It's completely random. So we've got our large bubbles in all over the place. We're going to move to a smaller dot. This is actually another rivet setter for the micro rivets. It'll give you a nice medium-sized dot to start filling in areas around the larger bubbles. The way I set up my pattern on this is I kind of nestle them into the larger bubbles and start filling in areas, and there's random placements, and other than getting them close to the larger bubbles, it doesn't really matter. And we work down to an actual leather tool, which is going to have a smaller circle in it, more of a dome, so it gives a pretty nice look. Again, we start nestling it into the medium-sized bubbles that we had before, and just random again, just start filling in. Here we're going to move down to a smaller circle and basically do what we've been doing on the past few steps. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Alright, you can see how it's starting to take shape. It's a neat little pattern. We've got a lot of gaps, but that's going to be handled in just a moment. And we've got a smaller circle. We're going to fill in just like we've been doing before. Happy bubbles. And as you can see, the pattern is getting more and more complete. Smaller and smaller bubbles. And yet another tool. And guess what? It makes bubbles. Even smaller. And we're going to fill in all the little tiny places. Tiny bubbles in your leather. Tiny bubbles. Yeah, but smaller tool, more bubbles. No more bubbles. Lots of little itty bitty bubbles, lots of large bubbles, medium sized bubbles. I think I use a total of 6 different size tools on this to get this kind of effect. I love it. I think it looks cool. And the overview, just a better view up close of what we've completed here. This is all freehand and just thrown together. Not bad for a leather doodle. Well, my video camera lost the dye work on this, so I apologize. I'll have to do a video on just straight out dyes for you guys. The orange colored leather in the center, which will pop up here in just a moment, is EcoFlow water stain. It's a gel antique. You just rub it on and rub it off. The outside edge is professional water stain in black and sealed up with Sadillac by Phoebings. You can get all of this at Tandy Leather. Please feel free to like and share. If you have comments or criticisms, leave them in the comments and I will endeavor to improve. If there are things you'd like to see, leave them in the comments also.